Hello and welcome to another historic video. Today we're checking out this red-green Berserk combo deck built around the Mystical Archive as that got introduced in the format recently. This is a pretty old card, so it does have some awkward templating, but the TLDR is it's 1 mana to double a creature's power until end of turn and give it trample, and then end of turn we also have to sacrifice it if it attacked, which happens to combine very nicely with all these 1 mana creatures like Heartfire Hero. Even the nerfed version in Historic is still great. We've got Cacophony Scamp and Fireblade Charger, which all deal damage equal to their power when they die, because now we can potentially set up some pretty consistent turn 2 kills if we play a card like Cacophony Scamp and then on turn 2 pump it up with Scale Up, making it a 6/4 creature until end of turn. Then attack, use Berserk to get up to 12 power, and then we get to sacrifice our creature end of turn, even in the case of a Heartfire Hero or Fireblade Charger, which don't automatically sacrifice themselves, unlike the Scamp, which is the preferred 1-drop since it can potentially just sacrifice itself if it hits the opponent. And then by sacrificing our creature, we get to once again deal damage equal to its power for potentially another 12 damage to just win the game on the spot. So that's kind of our game plan. To round things out, we also have the full set of the Slickshot Show-Off, which can potentially help us play around interaction by plotting it or fly over some other blockers, and then it kind of gives us a slightly different angle of attack. And then we also have the full set of Callous Sellsword to use the Burn Together adventure, where we can sacrifice a creature and deal damage equal to its power to any target. So that's similar to Berserk in that we can first pump up our 1 and 2 mana creatures, and then after damage we get to sacrifice them for even more damage on the way out. And in the case of our 1-drops, we essentially get to deal damage equal to their power twice with the Sellsword. So that's another great way to close out games very quickly. And then I'm playing the Sellsword over Thud, which is an alternative option for 1 mana to sack a creature and deal damage equal to its power. The Sellsword has a few advantages. Of course, we do have a creature attached to the adventure, so sometimes we can just hardcast it since we do have some multicolored lands in the mana base. And then Burn Together doesn't sacrifice the creature as an additional cost, but rather targets our creature. That can have its drawbacks if your opponent just removes the creature in response, but now in the case of a Slickshot Show-Off, we first get to increase its power by 2 once again before it's sacrificed, so that can also make a difference. And then our remaining pump spells include, of course, Monstrous Rage, banned in Standard, still very powerful in other formats, as it can also provide some much-needed trample. Then the Reckless Charge can also give our creatures haste, so if our opponent does have interaction and we top deck a creature later, we can also immediately attack with it. And then we can also eventually flash it back, so that can also come in handy, although usually the games are decided by turn 3, so we don't expect the games to go super long. And then Turn Inside Out, also plus 3 power, and if our creature dies we get to Manifest Dread, so that can also be decent in the face of removal. And since we're planning to sacrifice our creatures anyways, that can potentially leave us with an extra 2/2 that can get the job done on a future turn. And then Blossoming Defense to help play against opposing instant speed interaction by not only pumping our creature by 2, but also giving it hexproof. Of course, not quite as much power as some of our other options, but the flexibility here is nice. And then because we do want every land in the deck to make both red and green mana, since if we play a red 1-drop, we want to be able to scale up plus Berserk on turn 2, so we don't want any lands that can only produce red or green mana, so that leaves very few options. So we've got the full set of Copperline Gorge, the Pain Land, Carplusen Forest, Stomping Ground as a shock land, and then Mana Confluence and Starting Town are also necessary, and those can also potentially help us cast a Callous Sellsword. I did consciously make the decision not to include a companion, even though we could play either Gigantha or Lurrus, which are both options. Lurrus we can also potentially cast using Confluence and Starting Town, but since most games are going to be decided pretty early on, I don't expect the companions to matter all that often, and it can potentially give the opponent some extra information which we don't need to give them. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw with a reasonable hand. Could use an extra pump spell, but I don't think this is a mulligan. Alright, Thoughtseize, we'll have a look. Probably goes for Berserk. Yep. Monstrous Rage was a good draw. So then Scamp has the highest upside here. So Mardu, a Reanimator. Overlord, a milling, bunch of removal. and a Reckless Charge the draw. So, seeing all this interaction is going to make things tricky. And we could also plot a Slick Shot. Could also go Charger, a Reckless Charge. If I pump, attack, and use Sellsword, I would have 12 damage total. Whereas if I double pump and sacrifice a Scamp, it would be 14. So still a little bit shy of lethal here. So yeah, maybe we will just plot a Slick Shot for now and postpone our decision. And then next turn we've got a chance of presenting lethal. Especially if they tap out again. Barrogoyf, a big lifelinker. Blossoming Defense, the draw. Alright, I think we have it here. Slick Shots into Monstrous Rage. And gets this to 6 power. And then with the Sellsword, we first trigger the Slick Shot once again, and then we get to deal 8. Which is something we wouldn't be able to do if we had Thud as a fling effect instead, since then you sacrifice as an additional cost. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing a Lurrus deck, could be Auras. My hand's not bad, could use a Berserk as always, and a Sellsword would also go hard with a Scale Up. So those are the draws we're hoping for. And the opponent might be on the same deck here. So, play my own Scamp and hope we're not dead. It is reasonable to want to block, especially when we have a Slick Shot on hand as well. Possible they have a Trample trick. They did not have a Scale Up, so it makes it less likely that I just die here. Yeah, I think I'll block. Because they can also just sack their Scamp if they want to take mine out. And our opponent just casting the Sellsword. So their hand may not be all that exciting. We get to plot a Slick Shots. And then, yeah, just need a good pump spell here. Thoughtseize probably takes Scale Up, so they are deeper into black than we are. And Chain Lightning. Sellsword the draw. So if we go Slick Shot, turn inside out, this goes to 6 power, and then Sellsword's another 8. So I would put my opponent to 1, which is not quite lethal. I would get to Manifest Dread, our opponent can tap Starting Town for colored mana. So it would still leave me in a decent position. Yeah, it's a close one. Could just be patient and then draw another pump spell for the win, hoping there's no removal. But our opponent could also get a chance to top deck, so I'll try this. And then Manifest, find Scamp, that's useful. So then I'll keep up a mana to turn Scamp face up if needed. So then if it dies, we get to finish them off. So they can only tap the Copperline Gorge for colored mana. Could still die if they have another land like Copperline Gorge and then go Scale Up into Berserk. Something along those lines. Opponent does not attack. Oh, now with Slick Shots it should be trivial. So go ahead and play Slick Shot, attack. Face down card can also get in. And then for 1 mana there's nothing our opponent can do to stop both. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. Double slick shot and then plenty of pump spells to go with them. Although facing another red deck. Maybe a storm deck, yeah, as we see turn 2 Ral. So it's possible our opponent can just win next turn. Still seems better to plot a slick shot, so we don't expose it to a grape shot. Although it's not like our opponent's super likely to have removal. So hope they don't have the ritual that makes mana equal to the number of cards in hand, because at the moment they would get 6 mana out of me. Mana Morphos already nets them some mana. Artist Talent is fine. And that's it. Okay, drew the lanes. So yeah, not really expecting any instant speed interaction out of them. And then we can Monstrous Rage. And Berserk. And that's 26 damage, awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have 2 creatures, 2 pump spells plus Berserk. One of them can double up as protection, so pretty solid hand. Could even win on turn 2 if we draw Scale Up. Opponent black-white with a Thoughtseize, probably taking the Berserk. Goes for Slick Shots, and we drew Scale Up, so this is a turn 2 kill now. Yeah, it's possible they had removal to deal with the Heartfire hero, and that was their plan, but they got punished. Deal 14, and then end of turn sacrifice to Berserk for another 14 damage from Heartfire hero. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a reasonable hand. Maybe one land too many, could have used an extra pump spell. But 2 creatures and then pump spell plus Sellsword could do some damage. Opponent a red-white, plays a tap land. Okay, so for now I'm leaning plot Slick Shots. At most I could have dealt 12 damage with Turn Inside Out into Sellsword. So yeah, could be a burn deck if they're playing the Canyon, or a storm deck. Alright, knowing that they're on storm should make things a little simpler. So yeah, by pumping this camp we get it up to 6 power, and then we essentially get to deal 6 damage 3 times, so that's 18, and then the Slick Shot would get in for another 5 by getting pumped twice. So that would be 23 damage total. If we compare that to pumping the Slick Shot and flinging it, I would get to pump the Slick Shots twice with its trigger, and then giving it 5 additional power gets it up to 10. And then we hit for 11, even 12 if we sack the Scamp for 1 more damage. And then I can fling the Slick Shot for another 12 after it gets another +2 power. So we do get a little bit more damage by flinging the Slick Shot, but by flinging the Scamp we're still left over with the Slick Shot, so kind of depends on the board state, I suppose. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a Slick Shot with plenty of pump spells, but none of our more powerful ones. Blossoming Defense could be useful. This hand is weak to a counter spell or a discard spell. And it's not the fastest hand out there, so I think I do mulligan. Alright, this I can try. And then second Slick Shot versus Charger. Charger with Reckless Charge and Berserk is still not quite lethal. But if I top deck Scale Up, then I guess Charger plus Berserk could get there. I think I'm leaning second Slick Shot, but it's close. Because I do want to keep the charge to go with the Berserk. Opponent on a red aggro. So, yeah, we may not have a ton of time here to set up. Turn to Swiss Spear off Kumano. And I play with Fire Going Face. Well, that's a Scale Up. But of course, had I played a Charger on 1, it would probably have been taken out. So now, I think we plot a Slick Shot still, even though I have another one. And then hope they tap out, and then next turn we can wombo combo Scale Up Berserk. Amped Raptor, I'm happy to see. Hits a burn spell. So just don't want them to go Mountain, keep up another Play with Fire. And they did not. Alright, Scale Up into Berserk. It's gonna be just enough here. 10 power, 20, opponent's at 20, and that's lethal. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a Fireblade Charger, plenty of pump spells, and a Sellsword. So this is, at the earliest, a turn 3 kill. We do get Trample, so we can potentially get past the blocker. We are weak to spot removal. So, I'll give it a shot. But if our opponent just has a removal spell turn 1, it's going to be tough. Commercial District, so maybe a Living End combo comes to mind. For now, I think I'm happy to, at the very least, Monstrous Rage. I think we keep Turn Inside Out for the Sellsword turn. So we can pump twice. But I could also cast it in response to a removal spell now. Cabaretti Courtyard, a fetch lane, so that's not going to help their cause too much. Maybe this is Scape Shift combo, that will also make sense. So then I don't expect any 1-mana interaction from them. Berserk also a nice draw. Let's go to attackers. See if this works. It does. I guess we'll go for Berserk then. So that's 16 damage, and another 16 once the Charger dies. Get to manifest twice. Alright, not bad. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a promising hand. Could win on turn 2, in fact. With Hero into Scale Up plus Berserk. Slick Shot as a backup plan. Sellsword can also do more damage. So let's see what our opponent's up to. Tapped Steam Vents. So the only card I'm worried about now is Force of Negation. And we'll find out real soon if they have one. It does not seem like it. Alright, 14 damage, plus another 14 for another easy turn 2 kill. Well, this has been the smoothest to rank up to Diamond in a long time. So yeah, Berserk is a pretty messed up card, and I would be somewhat surprised if it stayed legal for its entire duration in Historic. Feels more like a timeless power level card. But of course, the context of the format matters. The fact that we're playing best of one as opposed to best of three also, of course, makes a difference, since this is kind of a one-trick pony deck that starts to fold once your opponent has some cheap interaction. But if the meta involves a lot of kind of storm combo decks that are creatureless but can potentially combo on turn 3 or 4, then people are less incentivized to be packing a bunch of creature removal, and then a deck like Berserk Pump Spell combo can sort of take over. But of course it's going to be kind of an ebb and flow. As more people will start to play these decks, more people will start packing removal, and then the metagame will shift some more. So yeah, for now this seems like a powerful option in the current best of one meta, but just be warned that it may not remain a powerful deck forever. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.